At first, the story looked simple. A mother walked into court claiming she only wanted what was best for the children. She said she needed full custody to protect them. She said the father was irresponsible. She said she needed financial support to give the kids a stable life. Everyone in the courtroom believed her, at least in the beginning. But as the case moved forward, small details stopped adding up. Documents didn't match her words. Timelines felt wrong. And when the judge began asking deeper questions, a very different story started to appear. This is not just a custody case. It is a story about truth, money, and how courts slowly uncover intentions that people try to hide. This video is not meant to attack mothers or fathers. Most custody cases are painful and emotional because children are involved. Courts exist to protect the child's best interest, not to reward one parent over another. But sometimes money enters the picture. And when it does, the situation becomes complicated. This case shows how courts do not decide based on emotions alone. They look at patterns, behavior, evidence, and motivation. And when someone's actions do not match their claims, the truth eventually comes out. The case did not begin with shouting, accusations, or drama. It began quietly, the way many custody cases do. A mother filed paperwork requesting full custody of her children and increased financial support. On the surface, nothing about the request seemed unusual. Courts see similar filings every day. What made this case different was not the request itself, but what slowly emerged once the court began examining the details. The mother presented herself as overwhelmed but devoted. She spoke about sacrifices, exhaustion, and the emotional weight of raising children alone. She said the father was unreliable, emotionally distant, and financially inconsistent. Her tone was calm, almost rehearsed, and at first it worked. People tend to trust confidence, especially when it is wrapped in the language of concern for children. But courts are not designed to judge based on tone or storytelling alone. They are built to examine patterns. The first thing the court analyzed was history. Who had been responsible for the children over time? School records showed that both parents were involved, but attendance logs revealed something interesting. The father had attended nearly every parent-teacher meeting for years, even during periods when he was not required to. The mother had attended many as well, but not consistently during the last year. Medical records told a similar story. The father's name appeared frequently as the emergency contact. He was listed as the parent who authorized treatments and attended follow-up appointments. This contradicted the image of an uninvolved parent that had been presented. Then came financial analysis. The mother claimed she needed full custody to secure financial stability for the children. Yet when the court reviewed her bank statements, the narrative weakened. There were large discretionary expenses that did not align with hardship. Dining, entertainment, travel, and personal shopping expenses appeared regularly. None of these are crimes. But when someone claims financial distress, courts expect consistency. More troubling was timing. Several large withdrawals occurred shortly after conversations about child support. These were not expenses tied to the children. They were personal. This raised an important question for the court. Was the financial request truly about the children? Or was it about access to additional income? Courts are trained to ask uncomfortable questions. Next, communication records were examined. Text messages, emails, and co-parenting app logs showed a shift in tone depending on financial discussions. When money was involved, communication became urgent and emotional. When parenting schedules were discussed without money, cooperation dropped sharply. In multiple messages, the mother threatened to restrict access to the children if financial demands were not met quickly. While emotional reactions are common during custody disputes, courts take threats involving children very seriously. Children cannot be used as leverage. The father's behavior stood in contrast. He rarely initiated financial conversations. Instead, he focused on schedules, school, and daily needs. When disputes arose, his messages remained consistent and factual. He asked for receipts, clarity, and documentation. This pattern signaled accountability. Then came the psychological evaluations. The court ordered independent assessments, not because either parent appeared unstable, but because the motivations behind the custody request were unclear. Evaluators spoke separately with both parents and with the children. The children expressed affection for both parents. That alone did not favor one side. What mattered was how they described daily life. With their father, they described routine, homework time, regular meals, predictable schedules. With their mother, descriptions were more variable. Sometimes fun, sometimes stressful, often uncertain. Children do not lie easily about patterns. They simply describe what feels normal. Evaluators also observed behavior during transitions. The children were calmer, arriving at the father's home, and more anxious when preparing to leave it. Emotional responses like these are not proof, but they are indicators. At this point, the court began looking beyond surface claims and into intent. Intent matters deeply in family court. The question is not who loves the children more, but who places the children's needs above their own consistently. As proceedings continued, the mother's focus increasingly returned to money. She requested expedited payments, backdated support, and additional allowances not tied to specific child-related costs. When asked to justify these requests, explanations became vague. The judge noticed something important. When financial requests were delayed or denied, cooperation with custody arrangements declined. When payments were discussed favorably, cooperation improved. This behavioral link was impossible to ignore. Courts look for stability, not control. Another turning point came when the court reviewed employment history. The mother claimed limited work capacity due to parenting responsibilities. However, records showed she had voluntarily reduced work hours before filing for custody changes. This reduction occurred shortly before the financial request was submitted. The timing suggested planning, not necessity. The father, by contrast, maintained steady employment and had adjusted his work schedule to accommodate parenting time without reducing income. He provided documentation of childcare arrangements, flexibility agreements with his employer, and long-term plans. Judges do not expect perfection. They expect responsibility. Then came witness testimony. Teachers, caregivers, and family friends were invited to provide statements. Many described the mother as loving but inconsistent. Plans changed often. Commitments were sometimes canceled without notice. The father was described as reliable, predictable, and calm. One teacher made a particularly important observation. During periods when financial disputes were active, the children appeared more distracted and anxious at school. When schedules stabilized, their performance improved. This suggested that adult conflict, especially when tied to money, was directly affecting the children's emotional well-being. At this stage, the court began reframing the case. It was no longer a question of who deserved custody. It was a question of whether custody was being used as a financial strategy. Courts have a clear stance on this. Children are not currency. The judge addressed both parents directly. The language was firm, but measured. The judge explained that financial support exists to benefit children, not to supplement lifestyles or serve as leverage. When support requests become disconnected from actual child needs, the system must intervene. The mother's legal team attempted to redirect focus toward emotional arguments. They spoke of stress, fear, and the difficulty of single parenting. The judge acknowledged these realities but returned to evidence. Emotion without evidence does not outweigh documented patterns. In the final evaluation, the court summarized key findings. Financial requests were inconsistent with documented child-related expenses. Parenting cooperation fluctuated based on financial outcomes. Children demonstrated greater emotional stability in one environment. One parent showed consistent responsibility without conditions. Based on these findings, the court ruled against full custody for the mother. Financial support was recalculated strictly according to documented child needs. Custody was adjusted to increase the father's parenting time. The decision shocked many observers because it went against initial impressions. But courts are designed to move slowly for this reason. Truth often hides behind convincing narratives. The judge concluded with a statement that stayed with everyone present. Love is not proven by words, but by choices made when no reward is attached. This case became a reminder of how systems protect children not from lack of love, but from misuse of power. Money can complicate relationships, but it cannot define them. The outcome was not punishment, it was correction. The children were not taken away from their mother. She retained meaningful involvement. But the court made one thing clear: parenting is a responsibility, not a financial position. And in the end, the truth did not come from accusations. It came from patterns, from behavior, from consistency. That is how courts discover the truth. Slowly, carefully, and without emotion. This case reminds us that courts do not listen only to what people say. They watch what people do. Money can influence behavior, but it cannot hide the truth forever. Children deserve safety, love, and honesty. When adults place financial motives above those needs, the system is designed to respond. In the end, this story is not about punishment. It is about protection. And it shows that truth, even when hidden behind careful words, always finds a way to surface.